Big Ten realignment. You could also say college football realignment as it relates to the Big Ten. I know that whether it's Clemson or Florida State or Miami, I've even heard Virginia, North Carolina, it looks like the ACC is the next conference. In fact, I think it absolutely is the next Power Four conference that is destined to fall apart, especially given the whole grant of rights fiasco and the fact that the ACC essentially sold their soul to guarantee that their floor would be moderate, but completely locked their ceiling into what is now oblivion. They can't compete with the SEC and the Big Ten, and I would argue they can't even compete with the Big 12. What are your thoughts on the ACC conference and what the Big Ten can get from them? And what are teams in general that you, if you were in the position of Big Ten commissioner, or just from your perspective, some teams you think the Big Ten should bring into the fold?
So, as it pertains to what you said before, I 100% agree with you. It can't, the ACC, they can't compete with the Big Ten. They can't compete with the SEC. And from what I've heard, you know, the ESPN isn't thrilled about bringing them back on after their TV deal is done. So, another red flag in the ACC. And the ACC as a whole is probably the weakest Power Four conference. I think pretty much everyone would agree with that.
Yes.
Um, you know, the Big 12 is really going to be interesting. That's a side note. That's another topic for another day. But when it comes to the ACC, you really, and conference realignment, you have to start with Florida State, in my opinion. Florida State, the Big Ten has had probably the most activity with them, I would say. And the SEC has really backed off of talking about Florida State. And I know that they have been in conversations, but from what I've heard and from what I've read is that they've really um, not talked about them as much in recency, and the Big Ten has continued to try and court it away from the ACC. Now that doesn't mean that the SEC can't get back in, but be that as it may, and the Florida State doesn't like its deal with the ACC, and this is a common theme with the power schools in the ACC. You think of schools like Florida State, schools like Clemson, schools like Miami. They don't like the deals that they have right now, and they want a better deal, and they get a better deal in the Big Ten and the SEC. But we're talking about the Big Ten here.
Absolutely.
So I would say if we the Big Ten did add Florida State, I would not want just Florida State from it just as a regional thing. I would rather have a couple southern teams added, not just Florida State on an island down there
Absolutely.
as well.
Would you rather
Which
have
leads me,
Miami or Clemson to, like, if you had to choose between the two to pair with Florida State?
if I had to choose between, it's a good question. If I had to choose, I think I would go with Miami.
Same here.
I think I would because I think Miami um, is a better program overall. It has a better history, in my opinion, and that's the Florida market is really robust, and that's something that the Big Ten really, really likes is those markets. And when they're adding, they take that into consideration.
Yes. Better market. I think Miami's more dedicated to football. You see that with NIL, the portal.
Absolutely.
Like, yes, Dabo Swinney is even with the program, like, I think falling apart before him. I still think he's a better coach than Cristobal will ever be. But at least Cristobal and the support network that Cristobal has established is better. And I mean, Clemson's athletic director moving to Miami. I forget his name, but Clemson's old athletic director
That's
is
right.
Miami's current AD. So I think that
I do remember
is
reading
the
that.
yeah, Miami's just better. And
Yeah.
Miami Florida State at its peak is a better rivalry than Florida State Clemson. Better history and, like you said, better market, more talent. Would you like Clemson to join? Like, just because, like, not even playing what ifs,
If
or
you, sorry, if you are turning the Big Ten Conference into a 24 team league or a 26 team league, then I would say yes. I personally, if I was the Big Ten commissioner, I would limit it at 20 just because I just inherently the college football in me doesn't want this to turn into the NFL.
yeah,
And I would rather it stay. I mean, we're already past 12 teams or 10 teams, but I would rather it stay 20 rather than approaching 30. That being said, if we were to go to 24, Clemson, let's not act like it's a bad school. I mean, Clemson would be a pretty good addition. I just think Miami would be a better addition.
yeah, certainly a better addition than Wake Forest or Syracuse
Come
or
on now.
Boston College. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. That would not be a good sign if the Big Ten added Boston College. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, it'd be rather pathetic. Um, the ACC, I agree with you, like, on an average basis, is the weakest conference. However, I would say that whether it's Miami or Florida State or even Clemson, because of their recruiting, their talent, and a variety of other things, they do have a higher ceiling. Like Florida State or Clemson or Miami, they have a lot of blue chip talent, and the Big 12 just doesn't have any of that. But the Big 12 is deeper. I think the worst Big 12 programs, middle of the pack Big 12 programs, are better than the worst and middle of the pack ACC programs. You told me in the warm up, in the preparation for the show, that you wouldn't just look at the ACC for additions to the Big Ten, but you would look Big 12, maybe even Notre Dame, which I think is the obvious. I mean, it's an
It is
obvious
pretty
goal of
obvious.
anyone. What do you think the Big 12 offers, and how realistic do you think it is for Notre Dame to join the Big Ten? Could they even join the SEC?
So, when it comes to Notre Dame, I, it's probably the most talked about team on here on this list, regardless of team. When it comes to realignment, they're at the center of it, I would think, and most people think. My stance with Notre Dame is that if Notre Dame wanted into the Big Ten and they really wanted that, I think it would have already happened, in my opinion. I think they were definitely a higher priority than a school like Washington. You could argue Oregon either which way, but um, that's beside the point, really. Notre Dame is a school that everyone on the planet should want just because of the ratings that they get. I mean, they get everything there. They really
Yes.
do. So, in my opinion, if they wanted into the Big Ten, then they would have already been in there by now. That doesn't mean that they can't add them though. And I think that to a it's going to come to a stance where um, they're going to be the only ones out there on the island, and it's going to be the SEC, the Big Ten, and probably the Big 12, although they'll be a step below, a couple steps. And the ACC, in my opinion, is probably going to turn into what the Pac-12 just did, imploded, and I think it's going to take a little bit for that to happen, but I think it will happen eventually. You look 5, 10 years down the road, and Notre Dame's going to be the only one out there on this island, and everyone else is going to be on the mainland. So, in my opinion, they're going to have to choose a side. And if they did choose a side, I would think that they would choose Big Ten because of the regional aspect. They won't have to travel near. I mean, if you're in the SEC, just on a practical standpoint, if you'd put Notre Dame in the SEC, that those air miles are going to add up. They're
Yes.
they're traveling south half your games, and if you're in the Big Ten, you have Purdue, Indiana, Northwestern, all within your radius, like right there. So on a practical level, on that point, I think that the Big Ten is obviously better than the SEC when it comes to courting Notre Dame. and then also the Big Ten will. It's not like the SEC will give them so much more money that they can't refuse. The Big Ten will give them tons of money,
Yes.
and that's something that obviously a lot of teams. I mean, that's really the main goal of this is money. So
Yeah, I
when it
mean,
comes to Notre Dame, will they join in the next 6 months? I doubt it. Could happen, but I think they will end up joining in the next couple years.
that makes sense. And what I was going to say is, yeah, I mean the Big 10 didn't get the Texas and Oklahoma level, like in terms of on the field football success that the SEC did. I mean, maybe you could say that Oregon and Washington in recent memory have had that, but the combined history of on the field success and Oklahoma appearing in the college football playoff several times, Texas just being Texas and always recruiting well, that was big. But in terms of markets, the Big Ten won the expansion war with the SEC because you got Seattle, you got Los Angeles, and they have New York City with Rutgers, who's improving as a program and,
Oh yeah,
and gaining fans and gaining attention. Maryland's the same way with Loxley. I mean, they've had 3 bowl appearances in a row, and they find ways to lose games that they should win, but then compete in games that they should get blown out in, which entertaining football draws viewership.
100%.
And with Florida State being in contact with the Big Ten and maybe Clemson and Miami, I mean, that'd just be a whole other media market. So, yeah, I think the Big Ten would win that bidding war against the SEC if it came down to it. I personally would almost want Notre Dame if they don't want in the Big Ten. It'd kind of be cool to see them join the Big 12 because I really don't want a Big Ten SEC only college football. Like I want there to be 3 or more power conferences forever. I can't do the 2 division NFL light Walmart NFL type
Well, we
stuff.
can't we can't do that because it already exists. Like we don't want to see the mini NFL.
No.
No one wants to see that. What makes college football so great is not just the pageantry, is not just the play on the field, is not just the memorable rivalries, it's the actual structure of the game is different than any other league out there. Um, so I would love for the ACC to stay. I would love for them to stay and for them to get good, for them to get better. Um, but if you face reality here, some of these teams will move on.
Yes.
Um, in an ideal world, we bring back the Pac-12 and we have a lot more variety, and we have college football at its best when it's robust, and you have all these conferences going, and you have all the conferences succeeding. But we don't live in an ideal world, and obviously the SEC and the Big Ten rule this world. So, and I would love for the Big 12 to stay on and keep their teams. And if you think about the Big 12 as well, they have great depth too. I know this is we're getting off topic here, but there's some teams in there that could really make some noise.
Yeah. I don't think that's off topic though, because there is one more team that we wanted to talk about, and that's Utah. I would really love to see the Big 12, the Big 10 rather, add Utah. They fit the bid with the American Association of Universities. I think that's what's called, the AAU.
Yeah,
They fit the academic bill. They're a consistent football program. I don't know what they'll be when Kyle Whittingham leaves, but right now they're good. I imagine they'll get someone good. I think Utah's a pretty good job with what Whittingham has built there. And outside of like maybe Iowa State for the sake of rivalry with Iowa, or
right.
Kansas for their basketball program and the fact that it looks like they care about football now. I think Travis Goff's a pretty good athletic director. I can't see much else, but there are still some teams, like you said, that have good depth, even though they're not known for being football powerhouses. Like they could make noise
100%.
in football. in other schools.
Yeah, when it comes to Utah, in my opinion, would be like the ultimate bridge between the Midwest. When you have Nebraska being the most Western team in the Midwest and really in that part of the country, and then the West. So, I mean, if you look at the Big Ten on a map, you have Nebraska here, you have everyone else over here, then you have California here, and I think Utah would be a really good bridge between this gap that we have just regionally, and then among with everything else you said, their on-field success backs up their strong case. I mean, Kyle Whittingham, you can't imagine he's going to stay there for the long haul, like 5, 10 more years. But he's built that program to an identity that matches what the Big Ten has, strong, physical, run the ball, play great defense. So, I mean, they fit the bill. Now, are they just going to be content in the Big 12, or, do they already win out? That's the big question with them. And the other big question is, does the Big Ten actually care to take them? Me, as the Big Ten commissioner, would love to take them and would take them in a heartbeat. But in the real world, where the Big Ten commissioner would they and the board, would they really want them? I don't know. Hopefully they do.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, in an ideal world, things would stabilize. Lincoln Riley would own the Pac-12 with USC and have crappy defenses and get blown out in the playoff. But that's not what's happening here. The Big Ten and the SEC are slowly absorbing everything. I mean, my thoughts on Big Ten realignment are I do think that Florida State to the Big Ten's happening. And I think that they'll bring one of Miami or Clemson, or maybe both of them with, and try and get Notre Dame, or if not Notre Dame, like North Carolina or Virginia, or maybe Virginia Tech, something like that. That's my thought on Big Ten realignment. I would love Utah to be added, maybe some Big 12 schools, but really I do want to leave the Big 12 alone. Like, I do want, if it's SEC and Big Ten dominating, fine, but leave the Big 12 like where it is. Just do that.
I
Uh,
100% agree. Like, it's no fun when like we said, it's no fun when it's just the mini NFL.
no, it's not fun at all. Plus, some will say, "Oh, well, the Big Ten and SEC will dominate forever." Well, from what we know now, absolutely, but it's very, very, very hard to predict the future. I mean, the one constant in college football, I don't know, I'm not an expert in college football history, but the one constant that I understand is that the SEC has dominated much of everything in terms of on the field success for a lot of modern college football. And the Pac-12 and the ACC and the Big 12 and even the Big 10 in some years have been incredibly weak. So maybe the Big 12 can have some teams that actually make significant damage, or I don't know exactly. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Big 10 realignment. Thank you so much for watching this episode of College Football with Sam. I appreciate it. And I would appreciate it even more if you were to hit that like button, comment your thoughts on this video down below, hit that big red subscribe button, and also click that notification bell so that your phone, laptop, or whatever device you use can ding or buzz whenever I release new content and notify you about it so that you can watch more videos like this. College Football with Sam is the best Big Ten football channel on YouTube. We're going to be doing a giveaway when we hit 20,000 subscribers, and we're trying to become one of the best, if not the best, college football channels on YouTube. Your support means so much, and to those of you who are subscribed to my Patreon or purchase merchandise from my store, the links to those are down in the description and pinned comment. Thank you so much. I want to give a shout out to my Patreons. Thanks to Crash2488 for being a Heisman member. Thanks to Spencer Bringhurst, Chris Lane, and Connor Little OH for being All-American members. And thanks to Will Loftus, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being all conference members. Have a great day, guys, and if you're listening on Spotify or any non-YouTube podcast platform, please check the link in the channel description to find my YouTube channel. And if you're listening on YouTube, feel free to check out my Spotify, if you so please. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.